In our plush living room, which was a testament to both our tastes and the spoils of our hard-won success, I sat down, trying to absorb Tom's sudden outburst. The room, usually a haven for our deepest conversations and decisions, felt oddly suffocating today. "You know, I'm sick of being the sidekick, always doing what you say," Tom had said, his voice strained with a mix of exhaustion and defiance. His words hung heavily between us, echoing off the sleek, modern furnishings that I had chosen during one of our happier moments together. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the lines of fatigue etched deeply into his face. It was true that Tom had always been the silent force behind my dazzling career in Hollywood, handling everything from intricate travel plans to negotiating contracts. He did it all without ever stepping into the limelight himself. Now, as we ventured together into the fashion industry, it seemed his role hadn't changed much. He was still the backbone, supporting me unconditionally. His frustration was palpable. "Tom, why haven't you mentioned this before?" I asked, my tone softening, hoping to bridge the gap that had suddenly sprung up between us. "It's not just the work, Holly. It's everything. The way we live, how we've been functioning. I handle the finances, sure, but it's your name out there, your decisions that steer everything. Where do I fit into all this, Holly? Am I just here to follow orders?" His words, sharp and filled with pent-up emotion, struck a nerve. I was taken aback. This was not the Tom I knew, or perhaps I hadn't been paying enough attention. He was right, in a way. I had been so caught up in leveraging my fame, pushing our business to new heights, that I hadn't noticed the toll it was taking on him. He had always been there, steadfast and reliable, but had I taken his support for granted? As he sat there, looking defeated yet defiant, I realized that our dynamic needed a change. I had to acknowledge his contributions, make him feel valued, not just as a support, but as a partner in every sense of the word. I didn't realize you felt this way, Tom. "I'm sorry," I began, reaching out to him. "You're not just a sidekick. You're my partner, my equal. Let's fix this. Tell me what you need, what you want. Let's make this work together." Tom looked up, a mix of surprise and relief in his eyes. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we both could thrive, not just in our business but in our relationship too. As I waited for him to speak, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, as true partners. His request for time off hung in the air between us, a fragile lifeline that might mend or further fray the fabric of our relationship. As I processed his words, memories of our earlier days swirled through my mind. Tom had always been there, both during the glittering peaks and the shadowed valleys of my career. It was his steadfast support that had enabled me to shine so brightly under the Hollywood lights. And yet, here we were, grappling with feelings of neglect and underappreciation from both sides. I remember when I lashed out during my acting days, how you calmed me, supported me. "I know how it feels to be overwhelmed," I started, my voice steadier now as I tried to bridge the gap between us. "But hearing you say all this, it's a lot, Tom. I thought we were in this together, that my success was our success." Tom's expression softened slightly, a sign that perhaps he understood my turmoil. "Holly, I know we've always shared everything, but lately, it feels like you're in a world of your own. You come home, and it's all about the next business move, the next collection. I miss us." I took in his words, feeling a pang of guilt. It was true that my drive to expand our business had consumed much of my time and energy, perhaps too much. I'd been so focused on making sure we're secure, on building something lasting. I didn't realize I was pushing you away. "You're right, you deserve more than to just fit into my schedule." His mention of the shopping trips and my handling of finances brought another perspective to light. While I viewed my financial contributions as a form of support, a way to express my gratitude for his sacrifices, it had inadvertently made him feel like a secondary player in his own life. "It hurts to hear you feel ungrateful, Tom," I continued, my frustration evident. "But maybe I've been blind to your needs. You've been patient, more than I've given you credit for." His suggestion about taking time off for his parents' anniversary in Japan seemed like a small but significant step toward healing. You should definitely go to Japan, Tom. Take the 2 weeks off. They deserve it, and so do you, I conceded, realizing that it was not just a vacation he was asking for but a chance to reclaim a sense of control over his life and our relationship. Maybe I should come with you, I ventured, surprising even myself. We could use the time away, just us, to reconnect. Tom looked up, a mixture of hope and surprise in his eyes. Really? You'd do that? Leave everything for 2 weeks? I think it's exactly what we need, I replied, feeling a weight lift slightly. To remember why we started this together. I don't want to just be your boss, Tom. I want to be your partner, in every sense. As we talked, the foundation of our marriage seemed to strengthen, rebuilding on mutual respect and understanding. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was a start, a promise to each other to strive for balance and togetherness. The conversation was far from over, but as we discussed plans for Japan, I felt a glimmer of the old warmth returning between us. As Tom continued to insist on taking the time off this year, I felt a tangle of emotions. I understood the significance of the occasion. His parents' 60th birthday was not just any celebration. It was a milestone. But the manner in which he presented his request, the timing of it amidst our busiest season, it all seemed oddly forced. Why now, when he knew how critical this period was for both our professional commitments? I get it, Tom. It's important, and I want to support you, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral, despite the storm of feelings inside. But you know how crucial this time is for us. The fashion show and the Paris collection are both landmarks for our brand this year. Tom's insistence on going without me, coupled with his comment about just spending it with his family, stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the dismissive ease with which he said them. It's fine, we'll just have it with my side of the family, he had said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Tom, are you sure there's no other motive here? It's not like you to push for something like this without considering all angles. You know how the business runs, we plan these schedules a year in advance. I pressed, hoping to uncover more behind his sudden urgency. He shrugged, an edge of defensiveness in his posture. Holly, I just need some time away. It's not just about the celebration. I need a break from all this, he gestured vaguely around him, encompassing the expanse of our home, which doubled as a secondary office. I thought you, of all people, would understand that. The accusation hit harder than expected. Was I being unreasonable? My mind raced back to the countless times Tom had indeed put aside his own needs for the sake of my career, our business. Yet, his approach this time felt different, almost as if he was using the event as leverage, a way to assert some control or independence in our relationship. Okay, Tom, I conceded, my voice softening. Take the 2 weeks. Go to Japan. Celebrate with your family. I want you to have that. But we need to talk about this, about us, when you return. We need to figure out how we can better balance our professional and personal lives. His face relaxed slightly, a mixture of relief and surprise at my acquiescence. Thank you, Holly. I know it's a lot to ask right now. As he left the room, a sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more he wasn't telling me. His usual open and straightforward demeanor had been replaced by something more reserved, more calculating. It wasn't like him, and it certainly wasn't like us. Left alone with my thoughts, I mulled over the dynamics of our relationship. This incident had exposed cracks I hadn't fully acknowledged. Was I too focused on the business? Had I neglected our relationship to the point where Tom felt he needed to escape to find some semblance of freedom or recognition? The idea pained me. I had always considered our partnership in both life and business to be our greatest strength. As I sat there, the weight of his departure looming, I resolved to use this time apart to reflect on how we could move forward, not just as business partners, but as husband and wife who genuinely supported and understood each other's needs. This situation was a wake-up call, and I was ready to answer it. After sending the email, I waited anxiously for the time to pass. The office seemed unusually quiet, or perhaps it was just the echo of my own restlessness filling the space. The workday finally ended, and with a deep breath, I dialed Tom's number, hoping he would pick up. The phone rang several times, cutting sharply through the silence of my office, only to end in voicemail. I tried to push aside the disappointment, telling myself he might still be busy with family activities. It was early morning in Japan, and they could be out exploring or indulging in one of their meticulously planned outings. But deep down, the lack of immediate contact gnawed at me, the silence from his end amplifying my concerns about our strained relationship. Sitting back in my chair, I felt the weight of the quiet office around me. My secretary had already left, her earlier words about confronting Tom and not letting things slide echoing in my mind. She was right. If we didn't address this now, the distance between us could grow too vast to bridge. Her blunt advice, although harsh, came from a place of care and concern. It was the push I needed to not just passively wait for Tom to reach back, but to actively seek resolution. Determined, I decided to try calling again, but this time through a video call, hoping the face-to-face connection might prompt a quicker response. The phone rang again, and after a few tense moments, Tom picked up. His face filled the screen, a mixture of surprise and apprehension visible in his eyes. "Tom," I started, my voice steadier than I felt, "I'm glad you picked up. We need to talk about what's been happening between us." He nodded, shifting slightly, the backdrop of his room visible behind him. "I know, Holly. I've been thinking about our last conversation a lot." "Good, because so have I. I can't shake the feeling that there's more you're not saying." "Why did you insist on going now, Tom? Is there something you're not telling me?" My question hung between us, a virtual chasm filled with unspoken fears and suspicions. Tom sighed, looking away for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "It's not just about the trip or needing a break, Holly. There's more. I've been feeling overwhelmed, not just with work, but with us, with how everything has been going. I needed some space to think, to miss you, to remember why we started this together." His words, honest and raw, hit me harder than I expected. The realization that we both had been feeling the strain of our roles, yet had failed to communicate our needs effectively, was sobering. "I understand, and I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner," I replied, the tightness in my chest easing slightly. "Let's use this time apart to think about how we can better support each other. Not just in business, but in our personal lives too." Tom nodded, a tentative smile forming. "I'd like that. And Holly, let's make sure we talk more openly from now on. No holding back, okay?" "Okay," I agreed, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't the beginning of the end, but a necessary pause to realign our paths and find our way back to each other. As we ended the call with a promise to speak again soon, I felt a renewed sense of commitment to not only our business, but to us. The conversation was far from over, but it was a start, and sometimes, that's all you need to turn things around. I was stunned. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the information. Wait, it was Tom's sister and her husband who proposed this trip? I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and rising anger. "Yes, Holly. They thought it would be a wonderful way to celebrate the 60th birthday together, and since you were always so busy, Tom decided it would be easier if he just took care of everything," my mother-in-law explained, her voice filled with a hint of hesitation, likely picking up on my shock and frustration. "And he used my card to pay for everything?" I pressed on, needing to hear all the details. The financial aspect was troubling, but the deceit cut deeper. Tom had orchestrated this entire trip behind my back, not only leaving me out of the decision-making, but also financing it with my resources without my consent. My mother-in-law sighed, "Yes, dear. He said you were too caught up with work and he didn't want to burden you with the details. He thought you'd be okay with it since you couldn't join. He just wanted to make everyone happy." Making everyone happy. I echoed her words, the irony bitter in my mouth. My thoughts were a whirlwind. All these years, Tom and I had navigated our marriage with the understanding that we would communicate and make decisions together, especially significant financial ones. This breach of trust felt like a slap in the face. I paused, taking a deep breath to calm myself. Thank you for telling me, really. I need some time to process this. Please enjoy the trip, and don't worry about the money for now. We'll sort it out when you return. Of course, Holly. And I'm truly sorry about this mix-up. We'll talk more when we get back, she replied, her voice warm yet filled with concern. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, my mind racing. Tom's actions were completely out of character. Was there something else bothering him that led to this? His usual prudence and respect for our shared financial decisions were part of the foundation of our trust. As I mulled over these thoughts, a deeper worry crept in. What if there were other things he hadn't told me? The trust we had built felt like it was crumbling under secrets and unilateral decisions. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I decided that a more direct confrontation was necessary. It wasn't just about the unauthorized use of money anymore, it was about understanding why he felt the need to hide his plans and go behind my back in the first place. I set up reminders to call Tom again, repeatedly if necessary, until we could have a thorough and hopefully honest conversation. I needed to hear his side of the story, to understand his reasoning, and to see if our marriage could withstand this breach of trust. Until then, every minute felt like an hour, and every unanswered call increased my resolve to seek transparency and possibly, a way to salvage what we had built together. The revelations about the trip and Tom's financial maneuvers left me feeling a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, disappointment. As my father-in-law's words sunk in, my heart raced with the implications of what had been done behind my back. Tom, the man I trusted with both my heart and our business, had used our resources without my consent, propelled by his sister and her husband's influence. I appreciate your honesty, I said, trying to maintain composure over the phone with my in-laws. It's important we handle this delicately but decisively when you return. My mother-in-law's voice quivered with anxiety. We had no idea, Holly. We thought it was a gift. Had we known, we never would have accepted. We'll make it right, I promise. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Let's not jump to conclusions about punishments just yet. The first step is to get a full understanding of what happened. We'll sort through the details when you're back. For now, enjoy your time together. We can handle the rest later. After ending the call, the silence of my office seemed louder than before. I felt isolated, grappling with the breach of trust and the deception that had woven itself so tightly around my personal and professional life. I needed to confront Tom, but first, I had to gather all the facts and prepare myself for what could be a life-changing conversation. I checked our company's financial records online, tracing the transactions linked to the black card. The extent of the expenses was staggering: flights, luxury accommodations, extravagant meals, and more. The figures stared back at me, a stark testament to the deceit. With each discovery, my resolve hardened. I needed to protect not only my personal interests, but also the integrity of our company. The financial misuse was not just a betrayal of our marriage, but a serious professional misconduct that could jeopardize our business. I drafted an email to our company's legal advisor, outlining the situation without too much emotion, seeking guidance on the steps we could take to address the financial irregularities and the potential misuse of company assets. I copied our CFO to ensure transparency and to prepare them for the potential fallout. As I leaned back in my chair, the weight of leadership felt heavier than ever. Being a female CEO in a competitive industry was challenging enough, without internal betrayals. My mind wandered to Tom's sister and her husband, their disdain for me, their competitive jabs, and now this covert operation to perhaps undermine me through Tom. The phone buzzed. It was an email alert from the advisor, agreeing to meet first thing the next morning. I switched off my computer, the screen's glow fading into the growing dusk. Tonight, I needed to gather my strength. Tomorrow, I would need it to navigate the storm. The drive home was quiet, reflective. I rehearsed the conversation I would have with Tom. How could I approach this without our emotions clouding the core issue? How could we possibly rebuild trust after such a betrayal? Upon reaching home, the house felt emptier than usual, the silence a stark reminder of the distance now between Tom and me. As I prepared for bed, the strategy for the coming days took shape in my mind. It would be a blend of personal confrontation and professional maneuvering. No conclusions tonight, just preparation and resolve. The future of our marriage and our business hung in balance, and I was ready to fight for both. Of course, the house is fine, I replied, my voice cold and even, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Tom's attempt to divert the conversation was clumsy, transparent. It was clear he sensed the ground shifting beneath him, yet he couldn't grasp the extent of his own peril. Look, Holly, I just wanted to check in, he continued, his voice attempting to regain some of its usual cheerfulness. I hope you're not too swamped with work. I manage, I said curtly, not willing to provide any comfort or semblance of normalcy in our conversation. Tom, while you're there, I suggest you enjoy your time. We'll have plenty to discuss when you return. There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear his mind working, trying to decipher my tone, the subtext of my words. Sure, Holly. We'll talk when I get back, he replied, finally, a hint of unease creeping into his voice. After hanging up, I sat in the dim light of the living room, the shadow seeming to echo the darkening of my thoughts. My plan with his parents wasn't just about revenge, it was about setting things right, about ensuring such breaches of trust and professionalism never occurred again. If Tom thought he could manipulate his way through this with simple charm and empty apologies, he was sorely mistaken. I reached out to my legal advisor again, detailing the necessity of tightening our financial oversight and expressing my intentions to audit all recent transactions thoroughly. We need to be prepared for any discrepancies, I explained. I want a complete review of all expenses charged to the company over the last 6 months. The advisor agreed, promising to have our finance team start first thing in the morning. I knew this was just the beginning. The upcoming audit would not only reveal the extent of Tom's indiscretions, but also serve as a deterrent to any future attempts by anyone within the company to misuse their position. My next call was to a private investigator. If Tom was engaging in activities that could further jeopardize our company or our personal lives, I needed to know. I need a full report on his activities during the trip, I instructed. Especially any interactions with his sister's family and any financial transactions he might be trying to hide. As I laid the groundwork for what was to come, a part of me mourned the relationship we once had. But that sorrow was quickly swallowed by a surge of determination. I had built my company from the ground up, and I wouldn't let it be compromised, not by anyone, not even Tom. The night grew deeper, and the quiet of the house enveloped me. I prepared for bed, my mind running through scenarios, anticipating Tom's moves and countermoves. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but I was ready. As I turned off the lights, the silhouette of the room seemed to echo the new reality of my life, one where vigilance was paramount, and trust, once broken, would have to be earned back, if at all. Tom to face the consequences directly. It was a harsh but necessary action, considering the extent of his betrayal. Tom, I continued, keeping my voice steady despite the satisfaction of catching him off guard, I had the company credit card you were using suspended. Misusing company funds is a serious offense, and I'm not just going to sit back and let it happen. The silence on the other end of the line was palpable. I could almost see him, scrambling to grasp the situation, his usual composure shattered by the sudden realization of the consequences of his actions. What are you talking about, Holly? Why would you do that? His voice cracked, the strain evident. He was panicking, finally understanding the gravity of his mistakes. You know exactly why, Tom. You've been using the company card for personal expenses, not just for this trip, but potentially beyond that. It's not just about the money, it's about the trust you've broken. This isn't just a small mistake, it's embezzlement, I explained firmly. But, Holly, you don't understand, this was supposed to be a surprise for the family. I was going to tell you about it. He trailed off, his excuses sounding feeble even to his own ears. A surprise that costs thousands of dollars on a company card is not a surprise, Tom, it's theft. And using the executive excuse about keeping the house clean? Really, Tom, as if that would manipulate me into overlooking your financial indiscretions, I said, my disdain clear. In the background, I could hear murmurs and whispers. Tom's family was likely catching on to the fact that something was seriously wrong. My sister-in-law and her husband, the instigators of this extravagant and ill-planned trip, would also have to face the reality of the situation. You need to return home immediately, Tom. We will be having a serious discussion about your role in the company and our marriage. I expect full transparency and cooperation in the upcoming financial audit, I continued, setting the terms for what was to be a very difficult but necessary confrontation. The call ended abruptly, Tom's excuses and protests dying down as he realized the futility of arguing. My heart raced with a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, but also a strange relief that I was finally taking control of a situation that had spiraled so far out of control. As I turned off the speaker, my secretary glanced at me with a mix of awe and concern. "Are you okay, Holly?" she asked gently. "I will be," I replied, mustering a smile. "Thank you for being here. Let's focus on the show for now. We have a lot to prepare, and I need to be at my best." As we drove on, my mind was already shifting back to the demands of the fashion show, but part of me was already preparing for the challenges that would follow once Tom returned. The road ahead would be difficult, but necessary to salvage both my company's integrity and, if still possible, our marriage. As I listened to Tom's distraught voice over the phone, a mix of emotions washed over me. Despite everything, hearing him in such a state tugged at my heartstrings, but I reminded myself of the deceit and manipulation that had led us here. "Tom, you need to understand the gravity of what you've done," I began, my voice calm but firm. "Using company funds for personal expenses, especially to this extent, is not just a breach of trust between us, it's a legal issue." Tom's breaths were heavy and uneven, a stark contrast to the usual confidence he exuded. "But Holly, I thought." "There's not much to think about, Tom," I interrupted. "You made decisions without considering the consequences or discussing them with me. And now, there are real consequences, not just for you, but for everyone involved." I could hear the desperation in his voice as he tried to grasp at any semblance of sympathy. "Holly, please. I'm in a real mess here. Can't you see? What am I supposed to do now? The hotel staff are aware of the situation. I've explained everything to them. They won't press for immediate payment, but you will need to sort this out legally when you return. As for now, you need to handle the situation there with your sister and her family. It's time you took responsibility," I explained. Tom was silent for a moment, likely processing the lifeline I had extended by speaking to the hotel staff. "Thank you, Holly. I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say right now, Tom. Just come home safely, and we'll sort out the rest here," I said, signaling an end to the conversation. As I hung up the phone, my secretary looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Are you okay, Holly?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. "I will be," I reassured her. "Thank you for sticking by me through this. Let's get back to work. We have a show to run, and I don't want this mess to distract us any further." As we turned our attention back to the preparations for the fashion show, my mind was still partly with Tom and the chaos he was experiencing. But I had a business to run, and my focus needed to be on the success of our upcoming event. The personal turmoil would have to wait until the dust settled, and I could confront Tom face to face about the future of our relationship and our business. In that moment, as I watched my team working diligently around me, I felt a deep resolve to protect the company I had built from the ground up. No personal drama could be allowed to jeopardize that. The entire ordeal had taken a twist I hadn't fully anticipated, but in the chaotic whirl of events, I found a bizarre sense of closure. The shock of seeing Tom and his sister's family stranded in such dire circumstances might have been overwhelming for some, but for me, it was a stark reminder of the consequences of their actions. After ending the chaotic video call, with Tom's desperate pleas fading into the backdrop of an angry crowd, I sat back and let out a long, slow breath. My in-laws had surprisingly turned into unexpected allies, having flown back in the luxury I extended as a thank you for their support and understanding. They had seen through Tom's schemes and chose to stand by me, recognizing my situation and allowing me to handle things as I saw fit. As I resumed my work, the intensity of the fashion show preparations seemed almost mundane compared to the drama that had just unfolded. My team, oblivious to the full extent of my personal life drama, continued their tasks with the usual urgency and creative flair necessary for such a high-stakes event. I appreciated this return to normalcy, focusing on the beautiful garments, the runway layout, and the lighting cues. Later, as I confirmed the details of my upcoming performance at the hotel, the manager was more than accommodating, thrilled at the prospect of hosting someone of my renown. "We're so excited, Holly. Your performance is going to be the highlight of our season," he had said, his voice bubbling with enthusiasm. It was a strange return to my roots, singing at the hotel, a place that had unwittingly become a significant part of my personal saga. In the weeks that followed, I kept in touch with the hotel receptionist, who provided me with updates on Tom and his group. Despite the harshness of their new reality, I felt a certain justice in their situation. They were safe from life-threatening harm, a condition I had insisted on, but they were learning a tough lesson about respect and consequences. My divorce from Tom was finalized quietly, with none of the public spectacle often associated with separations of our stature. It was a relief to put that chapter of my life behind me, to no longer be tied to someone who had so fundamentally betrayed my trust and our shared commitments. Life since then had been refreshingly peaceful. My relationship with my in-laws remained strong, a rare outcome in such situations, but one I cherished deeply. They occasionally joined me at public events and private gatherings, a testament to our mutual respect and affection. Work was as fulfilling as ever. The fashion shows continued to draw attention and acclaim, my brand growing stronger without the shadow of Tom's misdeeds. Every so often, I'd pause in my office, overlooking the bustling streets below, a content smile crossing my face as I thought about how far I'd come, not just in my career, but in my personal growth and resilience. Life had indeed thrown me some unexpected curves, but I stood today stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Tom and his conspirators were a distant memory, a stark lesson in the values of trust and integrity, and I was moving forward, my eyes firmly set on